He has 4 master's degrees in entrepreneurship, mechatronics, leadership and corporate governance, a Master of Science in Big Data Analytics. His unique blend of academic activities, policy development, expertise, and cross-sector leadership makes him an excellent speaker for our panel discussion today. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for Dr. Muduba. I would like to call upon our panelist, number 2. It's Dr. Mutepa. He is a Deputy Director of Financial Markets Division at the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe in the National Payment Systems Department. He has over 2 decades of banking and payment systems experience. He has also worked for the United Nations Capital Development Fund, UNCDF, as Digital Payments Advisor for Ethiopia between 2020 and 2021 when he was on a sabbatical at the Reserve Bank. He has strong expertise in leading the implementation of the National Digital Payment Strategy. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for Dr. Josephat Mutepa. Our panelist number 3 is a lady, Honorable Minister. I would like to call upon Director Titi Mariwo. She is a highly experienced professional in data protection and ICT regulation, policy and practice. She currently serves as the Director of Data Protection at the Postal and Telecommunications Regulatory Authority of Zimbabwe. She has over 20 years of experience as a legal advisor, consultant, and lecturer, both by Diane Kalen Sukra, which says, good governance is the art of putting wise thought into prudent action in a way that advances the well-being of those governed. Allow me, ladies and gentlemen, to delve with our panelists, with our esteemed panelists here, into this topic. We are going to start off with Engineer Muduba, who is going to share with us the current landscape, the governance landscape in Zimbabwe, for us to know where we are going, for us to secure a digital future. We need to take stock.
Policy framework. So this one is a set regime of laws and regulations, as well as standards that govern how organizations protect digital assets. And when we speak of digital assets, if you allow me to characterize the digital assets for my prescription, I will focus on the 4 critical assets, which are in any digital transformation: the technologies, the infrastructure. Then we look at the processes, that is the set of activities that are run through the technology. We also look at the data, which is the rest of the computational processes. And finally, the people who are the users and the data subjects in this context. We then look at governance, which is the institutional structures, coordination mechanisms, and oversight bodies that ensure these policies are effectively implemented. So you will see that with policies and from a regulation perspective, it's macro to our context, but with governance, it's micro, and you can do much to influence it. So the policy frameworks, then, if I'm going to just define the imperative of cybersecurity, policy and governance, without wasting much of the time, we look at digital transformation, and then we say, what is the purpose of digital transformation in any institution? The purpose is to advance the competitiveness of the institution, to make the institution stand taller than its rivals within a competitive environment. So when we look at cybersecurity governance, we are looking at consolidating the purpose, the objective of digital transformation, which is very pertinent to ensure that we remain competitive in line with the objectives of transforming, adopting digital transformation as a strategy. We look at the escalating threats, and we see that almost about 82% of corporates in our native operational environment have fallen victims to cyber attacks. But by saying a fallen victim to cyber attacks, we are not saying the 18% have not fallen. Remember, it's either you are hacked and you know, or you are hacked but you don't know. But in the actual fact, we all have fallen victims of hacking. So the idea of escalating threats makes it very pertinent to take cybersecurity as a governance issue. Then the issue of economic security, even at very higher levels, and then national security. We have seen what has been happening on the global landscape in terms of cybersecurity in advancing political difference at national level. Hence, the need to do the same in our context. So what then is the ideal state of cybersecurity governance? It must have a comprehensive legal framework, coordinated institutional structure, skilled cybersecurity workforce, continuous improvement culture, public-private partnerships, as well as proactive threat management, without being explicitly prescriptive. But these are the key pillars that characterize that. So where then are we now as a nation? We are ranked 129 out of 160 in terms of our National Cybersecurity Index, 133 out of 134 in terms of our Network Readiness Index, then 82% enterprises facing cyber threats. What are the existing governance structures? We have the Ministry of ICT, we have POTRAS, the regulator, and we also have RRBZ, for example, in collaboration with POTRAS, as indicated by the Director General, Dr. Machengete, in terms of cyber threats within the financial sector. So what then are the current gaps and challenges which we are facing as a sector and as a nation? Issues of operationalization of the National Cybersecurity Center, inter-agency coordination mechanisms for cyber incidents is also of importance. We see limited cybersecurity capacity and public awareness programs, despite the fact that we have hosted and we conduct these conversations. We still feel that much has to be done to increase accessibility to this. Then entities lack dedicated cybersecurity governance frameworks. I have also noted the same during my life as a private practitioner within the audit environment. So what can be done as I conclude my conversation? To bridge the gap between our current state and the ideal cybersecurity governance, we need to establish National Cybersecurity Center and make sure that it's well operational. Finalize National Cybersecurity Strategy, which I believe it was also part of is the conversation of last year, and I believe that has not yet seen the light. Strengthen inter-agency coordination as indicated in the gaps, enhance enforcement mechanisms, as well as launch national awareness campaigns to increase on the current efforts that we are doing, then build cybersecurity capacity. And I want to acknowledge that we've just witnessed cybersecurity capacity building as a product to move towards improved governance within this context. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mudura, for those insights. We now want to move on to Engineer Mario, Director Matete Mario, to tell us these recommendations that have been given. Is it achievable? Where are we really? Because as the Honorable Minister said, this is not just a talk show. We want actionable steps. And possibly if you can shed some light for us. Are we doing something? Have we done enough? What still needs to be done so that we can implement the recommendations?
Thank you, Moderator, and good afternoon to you all. Are we that hungry? Good afternoon. Okay, I would like to acknowledge the Honourable Minister who has just stepped out, and the Deputy Honourable Minister in absentia, and my Director General who is here present, and all the invited guests who are part of this conversation as we try to build a resilient Zimbabwe. In terms of the practical actions, exactly what has been done, particularly I would want to start by saying that A robust cybersecurity policy framework really requires, as Commissioner has indicated, that we need to have a very strong legal and regulatory environment or legal and regulatory framework that facilitates the protection of personal data, but also protection of critical infrastructure. And as Zimbabwe, I think we have done fairly well. Firstly, by enactment, of course, of the Cyber and Data Protection Act itself, which provides the framework that regulates the manner in which we process personal data. And within that framework, operationalization started in 2023, and 2 years down the road, I think we have done well in terms of training or building the critical mass of practitioners that we need as a nation to ensure that organizations have put in place technical measures as well as organizational measures to protect the data that we desperately all need in this digital era. Over and above that, our law has also codified cybercrimes. So if you abuse the cyberspace, the law now provides in our criminal code. We all know that our crimes are codified in the Criminal Codification and Reform Act, and 17 new cyber offenses were created, amending that criminal code to make sure that we create safe cyberspace for every Zimbabwean. So crimes such as, unauthorized access to data and data codes, crimes such as, sending intimate images of someone without their consent have been created. Also, crimes such as cyberbullying have been included in our criminal code, and these actually carry imprisonment of up to 10 years, as well as fines of up to $5,000 if you are caught on the wrong side of the law. So in terms of the practical, taking policy, isn't it? This is the key theme of this conference, policy to practice. We now have that piece of legislation, and to complement that, like my Director General indicated earlier on, we are now on a drive to train the police so that implementation then becomes, and enforcement becomes very effective in our nation to deter those who want to abuse the cyberspace. I would also say that in terms of the legislative framework, we have also done fairly well. We now have the domain names registration regulations, wherein we are trying to encourage every Zimbabwean to use the .zw domain so that we desist from using foreign domains. And Potras, in partnership with the ministry, in consultation with the ministry, came up with the domain name registration regulations in 2023, which Potras is now operationalizing to make sure that every Zimbabwean, we don't use a .com, but we use a .zw domain to encourage, the sitting of the information, whether internet, email information within the ZW domain. So this is something that is upcoming and that Potras is actually working on. Over and above that, I think the Honorable Minister has already spoken about that the economic blueprint itself speaks to the digital pillar number 9 of the digital economy. And under that, issues to do with cybersecurity are actually well pronounced. However, within the legal framework itself, we still have a few challenges as a nation, which we really need to look at, particularly issues around public key infrastructure. We still don't have legislation around digital certificates and also legislation around critical infrastructure. We haven't defined what is critical infrastructure in Zimbabwe and how the different roles and responsibilities of those within the critical infrastructure of the nation to ensure that this is protected from potential threats. I would also add that even within our Cyber and Data Protection Act, there's still room for improvement. Dr. Magaya was speaking about the fact that within the AI era, we have gone beyond the human being a person. We are even having AI chatbots being persons who are talking to our children, counseling those under the care chatbots. We have care chatbots that are counseling our people who may be suffering from dementia and so forth. So we then need to go forward and look into these issues and say, what are the gaps in our law? Is a person still a natural person as we define it under the Cyber and Data Protection Act, or we now transcend into the AI or the voice behind AI being a person as well, and how we deal with that in terms of the rights and responsibility of AI chatbot being a person and the natural person. The second issue that is also critical for a cybersecurity framework is definitely the aspect to do with cooperation and collaboration. And as Zimbabwe, we have done fairly well in terms of just moving from a talk show, but practical implementation itself. The Honorable Minister spoke of how we are going to join the League of Nations next week by signing the first United Nations Convention Against Cybercrime. And Zimbabwe was part of that process. The Director General led the delegation to the UN with the technical teams to ensure that Zimbabwe participated in the development and establishment of that particular convention, which was adopted in 2024 and will be signed next week. But over and above that, besides the UN framework itself, having participated as a nation, we have gone beyond to make sure that we are part of the Southern Africa Development Cooperation set, which is the regional set for SADC, to make sure that we coordinate with other SADC member states around cyber incident responses. We have also been enrolled under the Africa set. We are now a member of the Africa set as Zimbabwe. So our regional, sub-regional influence is actually being felt at SADC, but also at the continental level, as we can now cooperate with other sets within the African continent to deal with incident responses. And we have worked towards also becoming a member of the Global Privacy Assembly. So we are influencing norms as a nation, but also we are participating in terms of collaborating regarding incident responses around that area. And the ITU has already spoken about how it has actually assisted us with resources and technical expertise to train our magistrates. And I understand judges will also say, why did you start with the magistrates and not the judges? So this is a process. It's a continuous process we are embarking on. But over and above that, capacity building and capability building of our institutions is also a critical issue of the cybersecurity framework, which has been taken from mere policy document to practice, in the sense that already the issue of data protection practitioners who have been trained so far, we believe that by the end of the year, Zimbabwe will be having 1,000 practitioners who would have been trained in data protection. And we have already started seeing changes in organizations in terms of data governance, how institutions are now handling personal data, which never existed before the training of our data protection practitioners. We are beginning to see on your website your privacy statements, your privacy policies. We are beginning to see the notifications that are coming to the authority in terms of cross-border data transfers of different systems within your organization. However, we need to have a conversation, I think a broader conversation as a nation around the international trends on data localization and data transfers, because I know that whoever is holding our data right now as Zimbabwe and as Africa will determine our future. So we really need to think in the digital era and in the AI era, do we want to hand over data to international organizations where we come up with cloud as a strategy as a nation? Is that what we want? And in the recently ended Global Privacy Assembly, Africa was actually being called to action to say, post-colonialism, I think Africa should ask better questions about data transfers, in the sense that, do we just hand over data to cloud service providers who are beyond our countries? And what are the implications in view of the fact that whoever is holding that data now determines the future of Africa and determines the future of Zimbabwe? So that is a critical conversation we need to talk about, especially as a regulator. We are seeing a lot of notifications that are coming to the Director General requesting for data transfers to countries, some which do not even have data protection laws. And what are the implications of that data? Not just from a regulatory perspective, but also from a national security perspective. And the DG will actually be holding a breakfast meeting with senior executives, with chief executive officers, to say, as a country, is that the approach we want to hand over data to big tech? Or we can actually invest in local data centers as a nation to make sure that we localize some of that data and be the ones to determine the future of Zimbabwe. I would also like to speak to aspects of governance and oversight, which is also a critical component of the cybersecurity framework. I think there we can still do better as a nation, because our counterparts in Zambia, just across the border, they have now established a national cybersecurity agency, which is coordinating all efforts around cybersecurity in their nation. And this is just a recent act that was established, and the agency has just been recently established, and they invited us as the national set to share, they are going to share their code, because now they are an agency, and they are going to share with also that member states of a code where we can report all numbers that we think are perpetrating cyber crimes within our jurisdiction, but also within the jurisdiction of the SADC bloc as a whole. I think I'll stop there for now and give an opportunity to others. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Director Kusinalo, for that passionate presentation. Indeed, she has expertise in the implementation of policies. She spoke about the critical issues, having the policies, implementing these policies. As part of Dr. D.K. Machengeche's presentation, he says, are individuals regulated? I think from her presentation, we can see that indeed they are regulated, and there is a codification of the Cyber and Data Protection Act in relation to making cyber offenses criminal offenses as well. So indeed, individuals are regulated. She has also spoken about collaboration within the nation and beyond. At this juncture, we would like to request Dr. Josephat Mutepa to take us through the strategies for resilience. What are those initiatives that as a country, as the central bank, have put in place to buttress resilient infrastructure?
Thank you very much. I wanted to take the mic, but I saw that our moderator is very energetic in cyber resilience. Thank you very much for those who have spoken before me and writing on the protocols already observed. Indeed, a policy is important, and I'm glad that Zimbabwe already has elaborate policies, at least the basics, for us to move. But we now need them to move from policy to practice and say what can be done. I can share with you a dilemma we had in the bank some 10 years ago. We had no Data Protection Act, we had no Cybersecurity Act. And I remember I was asked by the governor then to lead a team within the bank and desktop, not even going to any kind of benchmarking, to come up with a cyber security guideline. And we successfully did that. I remember telling my team that there is no perfect guideline, but we need to start somewhere. And I'm glad that that guideline came into life, because the financial services sector, unlike other sectors, you cannot play catch up. You have to go ahead. I think it's the education sector, the health sector, the security sector, and the financial services sector. They are key in that you have to move faster than everyone else. As our banks, as our platforms become more digital, which we have worked on since the 90s, it means that cybersecurity is an issue which we need to manage. So a lot of hygiene aspects need to be put in place, which are the protection of servers and all those. Those are basic in hygiene. Unfortunately, this hygiene aspect to the individuals who are also important transacting public is not there. And I think one key area from practice, from policy to practice, is to capacitate our citizens more. Because our citizens, they enjoy to be online, which is great. I also do. And they also enjoy to go to areas which they are not very familiar with, in sites which are exciting them. And sometimes they are not as excitable because these are dangerous zones. I grew up in the 70s, born in the 70s, And during that time, it was easy to protect children because you just tell them not to go to the biggest river, biggest dam, you don't go into the forest alone. But now, the forest is within their tablets and phones. I remember recently there was a law passed in, there was debate in Australia where they were saying maybe children at some age should not be allowed to have cell phones. And I was really shocked because back at home, my nieces and cousins were clamoring to have phones at a very young age. And it's very difficult to manage those issues. So as the financial services sector, what we have done, we have ridden very much on international best practice. We have worked with the IMF, with the World Bank, and recently we just completed a review of our cybersecurity guidelines, which we then published in the last month. And we thank the IMF for working with us. And we even went further to simulate some situation of cybersecurity with the IMF as part of capacity building. In addition, we have even gone further after the Data Protection Act now to also revise our guideline to ensure that issues of incident reporting are heightened, issues of governance are heightened, and issues of managing third parties, because one of the critical areas in the financial services sector is third parties. We work with various suppliers of systems and suppliers of various information, and that has to be managed because that is also an area where cybersecurity can come in. I must also say that in the past months, in the past years, we have also seen Zimbabwe being a target now. We never used to have a lot of targets in terms of ransomware, but Zimbabwe has become also a target of ransomware, even in the financial services sector. I'm glad to say at this stage, nothing much is really manifested in us losing money or losing data, but there has been attempts in the sector. And we thank God that at this stage, whatever we've put in place is good enough to see us through. The other aspect which is also very critical is that if you look at central banks world over in banking and finance, we are also guided by some benchmarks like the BIS guidance on cyber. We also have the BIS guidance on financial market infrastructures, and there are basic hygiene issues which should be put in place, and governance arrangements which are also important. So in putting policy in practice, we have followed those guidelines to the latter, and it has helped us. The other aspect which is also critical is that as our country is forging ahead to ensure financial stability and price stability, you find that you then become a target because maybe our currency was useless before. No one would really worry about Zimbabwe. But Zimbabwe now is now on the global map because of what we are doing, where we have seen stability coming into the sector, the economy is growing, month-on-month inflation has gone down. All those makes us a target for cyber security. And Zimbabwe is no longer a country where you can then say we are insular. We are no longer in the 70s, as I can say. We are now in the 2000s, and we are going forward, and we need to adapt to the new technologies. One of the other aspects which is also critical for us, in line with NDPS 2, in NDPS 1, and now I'm already talking about NDPS 2 because we are almost going to launch it soon as government. What is exciting is that the digital economy has got to stand on very strong ground of cyber hygiene and cyber security and resilience. This is critical because it brings about trust in the economy and confidence in the economy. If one is hacked among us, no matter it's your competitor, it doesn't matter. You might laugh at them today, but tomorrow the whole sector is actually no longer safe. I remember very well, I was supposed to travel to Ivory Coast years back, and that was the time of Ebola. And everyone thought the whole Africa was under Ebola. So even travel, if you look at the number of travels into Zimbabwe and other countries was very low because people thought everyone had Ebola. And thank God, COVID-19 came and Africa stood. Because it was going to be like Africa has got COVID-19 and we were not going to get any direct investment into Zimbabwe or any other country. What I'm simply saying is that the issue of cyber is, it goes further than the individual company. It goes further than the sector. It goes further than the economy, and it goes throughout the whole community. So it is important to make sure that we do our best as institutions. Lastly, as we are the regulator of the financial services sector, the banking sector, we ensure that our sector, whoever comes into that sector, has got enough safeguards to ensure that they are safe and sound. I think you always hear the example say the financial service sector remains safe and sound. And when we say safe and sound, it's not only the capital adequacy and all those other issues, but it's also issues to do with institutional frameworks and hygiene factors to manage cybersecurity. And if you look at if you ask Potras, you hear that the financial services sector, in terms of awareness about cyber, they were actually the highest when a survey was done. I think we were around 78-80% because of the importance of that. Lastly, just to thank the ITU and Potras as well. We have seen the importance of this digital security lab which they capacitated us. And of late now, we are beginning to test even rudimentarily the apps you use for the banking sector. All those mobile money and mobile banking apps. We are testing them behind the scenes, and every institution where there are weaknesses, they are then addressed as we go. And we thank God that is also going to help us going forward. Whether we are insulated from cyber, we are never insulated. When Dr. Magaya spoke here, it got me scared that maybe we now need to move beyond the normal into abnormal, because with AI, you can actually replicate transactions on your account, several transactions, with bombing your account, and with no time your money is taken out. So we now need to move further than where we are. So we continuously need to work together, and the industry, the financial services sector, remains a very strong pillar in making sure that we are cyber, at least in sane, in terms of the financial services sector. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mtepa, for his imploring us that we now need to move forward in securing our digital future. I will start with a question posed towards you, Dr. Mtepa, that we all know that the financial services sector is at the core of financial activity in the nation. Therefore, the infrastructure is targeted very much by cyber criminals. And you've also spoken about ensuring that the regulated entities, they comply with the guidelines that you have given so that we protect this critical infrastructure. How, as a regulator, are you assisting or supporting the regulated entities, not just to comply with the guidelines that you have given, but to move more into proactive resilience, not just to tick the boxes, such that when the regulator comes, they will see that they are complying? Are there any efforts in promoting proactive resilience?
Thank you very much. Indeed, there are great efforts in that area. One thing we always say at the bank is that cyber hygiene and cyber security is not a competitive issue. It's not like you have bought a new car and everyone in town needs to know that you have a new car. Actually, it's better to all have new cars, not only you, when it comes to cyber security. So you find that in the banking sector, there are a lot of collaborative efforts behind the scenes. It's only unfortunate that because of the sensitivity of the sector, sometimes it's very difficult to put it in the public domain. But what I can say is that I remember 5-6 years ago, when there was an attack on one of the central banks in the world, I think Bangladesh Bank, the SWIFT as a community, which is our global financial technology network, started a program which they called Customer Security Program, where they were making sure every institution and every regulator ensures that their own regulated entities are cyber hygiene. So we started that project, we led that project as the Reserve Bank, and we actually got a lot of capacity building from SWIFT and SWIFT partners, and they would come in for various webinars and even practically to actually look at our environments and make sure that the environments are secure. And I'm glad to say that journey also put us to another level. When we had one or two incidents in the sector, one of the defenses was actually the customer security program. It actually helped a lot of institutions so that they didn't lose any data or lose any information. The other aspect which we also have done as the bank, as soon as we issue a guideline, what we normally do, we call our banks, we sit down, we go through that guideline to ensure that everyone understands, both from business and from technical, understands what we are looking for. And we normally give a grace period. We don't say you should be compliant tomorrow. We actually we look at the sector in terms of where are they, and then we benchmark ourselves to say by this date we should be at this level, looking at those who have moved ahead and those who are moving behind. So we have also done that very well. The other aspect is that when we do our on-site examinations as the Reserve Bank, the National Payment Systems and the banking regulator, we also actually we have our own cyber security professionals within the bank who reside in ICT division. And we actually go with them on site so that they can also help us in these areas which maybe are blind to us. We are not going just to tick the boxes. We actually do penetration tests, and all those things are actually requirements for each institution. And the planning of your cyber plan is also required as a requirement by the Reserve Bank. And you have to make sure that all those things are done. In addition, in terms of the governance arrangements, cyber issues have been heightened to the board level of every institution. And in addition, they have to hire particular skills and also separate. I know in the past, we only had the risk management unit and the operational risk. That was the main risk which was there. Now you will find that people like Audrey is now a cyber expert in a bank. We never used to have that. And those structures are also determined by the Reserve Bank to say, we would require somebody who is in charge of cyber and who will be able not even reporting to ICT, but also straight to the board and executive management. So those are some of the things we've done as a country. Thank you.
Thank you for those practical steps that can be implemented in any other sector of the economy. My next question will be directed towards Director Tsimali to ask that as you go out and implement the Cyber and Data Protection Act, regulations, guidelines, what are some of the pain points that you are coming across as you go out or throughout the sectors, the different sectors, in implementing the guidelines?
Thank you for that pertinent question. For us, at the moment, we have not been having huge challenges. Why? Because we have been co-creating the guidelines with the stakeholders. From the first guideline that we came up with on the appointment of data protection officers, we just didn't issue it to the regulator. Like the DG said, our approach is coordination and consultation. So we went to Kariba, we invited all stakeholders in the nation, that we are now operationalizing the implementation of the Cyber and Data Protection Act, and we are coming up with guidelines to help you comply. So the approach the next 5 years is to help you to comply. So we're encouraging voluntary compliance, and we have facilitated that by making sure that we co-create together with the stakeholders all the guidelines. Last week we were in Nyanga with some of you who are here. We developed 7 more guidelines which are going to help us to implement also the Cyber and Data Protection Act. So because of that approach that we have taken as a regulator, by the time you issue the guideline, the stakeholders are already ready to implement it, and and some would have already implemented because we co-created together. So that approach is actually limited the challenges. We're not having pushbacks because of that approach. And I think the other important thing for us is that we've been raising awareness. We have been in the boardrooms of many of your organizations. We have trained your board members, we have trained your senior executives, and over 1,000 senior executives have been trained in Zimbabwe. The board members and the senior executives, even in the constitutional organizations or commissions within the nation. So that approach is now ensuring that the board is already aligned in terms of implementation of the Cyber and Data Protection Act, and even the availing of resources to those who are supposed to implement this law. So once the board is trained, then the life of the data protection officer or the cybersecurity officer is actually made easier because the board understands that this is a board issue and it's got value to the operations of the organization. Then, over and above that, the citizens themselves, we have been raising awareness, and so far we have done 7 awarenesses in 7 provinces of the nation, and by the end of the year, you have seen our athletes. We are moving to the remaining 3 provinces. By the end of the year, we would have done awareness in the 10 provinces, and next year, our approach is to go to the district level and to the ward level to make sure that the 50 million Zimbabweans understand their data subjects' rights in terms of Section 14 of the Cyber and Data Protection Act. And once citizens understand their rights, which we are seeing slowly, from the 7 provinces we have been to, we are seeing a lot of complaints that are coming to the authority. We have dealt now with over 50 complaints that are being, and some are actually dealt with in terms of alternative dispute resolution without necessarily going to the courts. So that approach of raising awareness, capacity building, co-creation, and coordination with other regulators is actually made life easier. Like now, we have been invited by our counterparts at the Insurance Pensions Commission to do what we call local benchmarking in terms of doing assessments and doing inspections of the different stakeholders, because we are regulating in the same space. The same data controllers are the same insurance companies that IPEC is regulating. Likewise with RBZ, the same banks are also the data controllers that we are also checking in terms of making sure that they comply with the provisions of the Cyber and Data Protection Act. So that approach has helped us. Yes, the uptake has been slow where there has been limited knowledge. But the moment institutions become aware, the moment citizens become aware, they rush to want to comply. So there's been the edge to wanting to comply, and a lot of the stakeholders were saying this was actually long overdue. We didn't have a data governance framework as a nation. But over and above that, I think the pain point for some institutions, particularly the academic institutions, has been aspects to do with open data access and transparency or accountability. They've been asking, now with the Cyber and Data Protection Act, can we still use data for research? We need to go through the different requirements of the Act. But we are saying as the regulator, the provisions of the law are very clear. You are allowed to use data for research for as long as you put in the appropriate safeguards to make sure that it doesn't detect or reflect the identities of those who have been used in that research. You can use data for statistical purposes or statistical analytics. You can use data for archival purposes. So for academic institutions, because of limited understanding that our law appreciates and acknowledges the importance of research and statistical analytics, as well as archival needs of the nation, there are certain exemptions that are there for purposes of research, but of course they are not, the general rule is that they are not allowed to use that data reflecting or showing the identities of those who have been used in the research. So the aspects to do with an open data policy for the nation is still a pain point for the academic institution, and I believe that with the AI strategy that has been approved by Cabinet within the framework of the AI policy, because AI feeds on data, and we are saying what data sets do we have and where are they housed? Where are the citizens going, or the institutions going to go to get the data that they need to generate or to develop the different AI models that we need. So the aspect to do with the open data policy is still something that is critical, and that is still a pain point for some. But as the regulator, because we are still encouraging voluntary compliance, we haven't been seeing a lot of challenges. Of course, within institutions, there could be challenges which we are yet to be aware of in terms of particularly where they position the role of the data protection officer and so forth, but we have provided that guidance for institutions to follow. I think those are some of the issues I needed to raise. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Tsitsi. One thing that is coming out is our regulators are not very punitive. They actually allowed us to co-create solutions for a resilient future. My last question will go towards Dr. Mudua. What more needs to be done for this private sector, government, academia collaboration so that we can have a resilient digital future?
Okay, thank you. I'll be very quick on this one. To start with, we say that there is no antivirus, if you allow me to use the term stupidity, for human stupidity. Unlike the stomach, which complains when it's empty, the mind doesn't. And people are a critical player in this conversation. You remember that the whole issues of Section 14 is pronounced by Director Mario is to provide rights, to provide prescriptions of the rights of data subjects to other people. And the very people whose rights are prescribed in that section are the very people who violate the rights of others. So in terms of conscientizing the population, we need, if our governance efforts, if our technical efforts, our administrative and fiscal efforts are going to be very practically useful material in terms of ensuring cybersecurity resilience within our nation, then the people first must be conscientized so that they know their rights and they know their role in providing the security. If you look at the academia is the hub from which knowledge is nurtured. We need to capacitate our institutions of higher learning, even at very low level, so that cybersecurity becomes a common conversation, just like gender issues have become. At every level, we learn gender issues to make sure that we promote gender balance and gender understanding amongst the diversity within our societies. So we need to convey our plural expertise to ensure that the public and private sector converge towards a common objective of improving cyber resilience. The infrastructure, where possible, should be shared to ensure that at sector level we minimize the burden and we minimize the risk of having, that divide where we have within the common sector, some are riding on high-spec infrastructure, while some are riding on low-spec infrastructure, but then they are connecting on the same node for a common objective. At the end of the day, the ones that are riding on less resilient infrastructure become a risk. They become a conduit, an avenue of attack to those that are not. So at a very higher level, we need to improve and maintain our grip in terms of oversight, and we need to cherish the regulator on that. You have seen what Director Mario has been saying, what Dr. has been saying in terms of regulating the fintech, because one of the key motivations of cyber attacks is monetary gains. So where the money is, it's a very good target, and it's a very good indicator that weaknesses can exist because attackers want to gain the financial value. So we need to collaborate within our diversity constructs of our expertise, our professional contacts, and our business operations to ensure that we build a cyber resilient nation that promotes the economic growth which we all want. I thank you.
A big round of applause to our panelists. They did a splendid job. I'll just open up the floor now to a few questions that we